So good evening, guys. Thank you for showing up at the after show after the chat at Smokey's channel with Fazale Rana, and we will continue here to talk about origin of life, about evolution, everything that comes up. Mic is open. It doesn't have to be just about abiogenesis. Whatever you guys like to talk about, feel free, and let's have fun together. Hello, Jungle Jargon. Nicholas is just away for a few minutes, and he will come back. We are waiting for Smokey to come in, join us, and there is room for more people. Whoever wants to join, please do so. The link to StreamYard is in the description.
Yeah.
Hello, Chris. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Antangelo. Thank you for hosting this and having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hello, Andrew. Good evening. So, do you guys want to start? We have some noise here.
Yeah, I enjoyed the discussion. I'm not going to be able to be on long because the phone will probably heat up and cut out. But
I hear some noise here. I don't know from who it's coming. I think it's from Andrew. Let's check here. Yeah. It's from Andrew. When he fixes it.
Yeah. Hang on, let me shut my door for a second. There's another one while going in the background.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an excellent discussion as usual. There's a lot going on in the cell biology that people just really aren't aware of. But of course, if we just thought about it, you know, logically, is that there has to be all this information and communication going on to make living organisms like we see. I mean, it didn't take a rocket scientist for the prophets to figure out stuff like that. You know, that were fearfully and wonderfully made, like King David said. You know.
Yeah, the amazing thing is that unbelievers, they now believe that even with the odds, which are astronomically high, they are in the realm of the absolutely impossible, that somehow it happened and it's possible anyway. So they just stick to what they want to be true, no matter where the evidence is leading to. That's quite interesting, I would say.
Yeah, I think their bias is showing that they want.
Hi, Luca.
They want.
Hi, nice to be here.
There's Luca. How you doing, Luca?
Everything is fine.
Yeah, that's good.
I really enjoyed the video with Rana.
You're from where, Luca?
From Italy.
Ah, bravo, sono anch'io italiano.
Immaginavo.
Beh, il nome non lo negano.
Sono di Milano, cioè vicino a Milano.
Ok. Benissimo, benvenuto.
Grazie.
Yeah.
We even got the international community here.
Yeah.
Yeah. People from the other side of the world too, all over.
Yeah, that's right.
Where are you from, Andrew?
I'm from Australia.
Okay. So it's early in the morning there, I guess.
No, actually, it's mid-morning. It's 10:30.
Okay. Yeah.
Here it's night. late night, like 2 a.m.
It's 7:30 where I am.
That's fun, really. International community here. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I was just following the last half hour, maybe or so, of the chat. I was in Atheist live stream before, and I was hearing Fazale talking about RNA on clay. But RNA clay is actually not, upon my understanding, not producing RNA. The claim is that a clay is just a way to prebiotically link RNAs together and polymerize them to make longer RNA strands. So the problem of RNA coming to exist on the prebiotic curve is prior to explaining how it polymerized to the first self-replicating strands. And I have listed almost 30 different problems, and it's really in the realm of the absolutely impossible. I mean, to join the parts together to make the ribose, the phosphate, and the polymerization is also a big problem. To have the parts joined at the right place, there is no mechanism for that. So there are extraordinary problems. And when someone really honestly analyzes all this, then the only rational conclusion is that naturally, by unguided means, it's simply not possible.
And it requires distilled water too, on top of everything, which distilled water is almost an impossibility to have.
So the water paradox is another problem, yes.
On the synthesis part, I would love to see what are the problem with that, because I'm not an expert on prebiotic health or nothing. I'm just a chemist, but I know something about chemicals.
I have listed these. I can give a link to you guys if you want. I can put it on the screen. It is really it is an enormous problem. So I can advance that. It is in the realm really of the absolutely.
No, I would love to know about the synthesis of RNA, because polymerization is indeed a problem, and I I know that, but on the synthesis part, I would love to know more.
Yes, I have put a link here on the chat, and you guys can have a look. And I'm listing over 25 different problems in regards of synthesis of RNA. If you guys want, I can put it on the screen, or you can just access it, whatever you.
I guess it. Okay. I will need some time to read that.
Wait, Luca, so I'm wondering, I don't know if I'm mistaken, is your worldview like promoting abiogenesis or some sort of atheism, or is that your perspective?
I'm an atheist, actually.
Okay, just wanted to kind of check that. What about abiogenesis? You have a general opinion on that?
I think it's possible, but it's not a theory. It's not a fact of science. So I think it's possible, but no more than that. I cannot show to be true.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted like context when I'm listening to you.
Don't worry.
Do you guys want that I read some of the problems, or do you? I'm trying to put it on the screen, but I did make an upgrade yesterday of my computer, so
I would love to discuss some of that if you like, but I'm only a bachelor, so not an expert on anything.
Okay, the first problem: how would prebiotic processes have purified the starting molecules to make RNA and DNA, which were grossly impure? They would have been present in complex mixtures that contained a great variety of reactive molecules.
Well, there is no simple answer to that, but I think it's not even impossible to get some compounds in nature. You can find it with how can I say that? Like a diamond, it's pure carbon. So I see that's a problem, of course, but I don't see that as an impossibility.
Yeah, that would be in regard of ribose, but you need phosphate. You need the 5 nucleobases. You need the right ones. You need pyrimidines and purines. And you need the right ring structure. You need the right elements, carbon and nitrogen. You need to have the right isomer formation of the base in order to have the right strengths of Watson-Crick base pairing. And that's already a huge problem. Recently, a paper came out which pointed out that there are over 1 million different configurations of the elements of these ring structures, so anything can be. How do you get the correct ring structure and that in a repetitive manner? I mean, for example, to have a minimal bacteria which is free living, which can synthesize all its building blocks to make amino acids and whatever is required in regards of basic building blocks of life, that minimal bacteria has 1.3 million nucleotides. And the common view is that the minimal living organism is Mycoplasma with about 500,000 nucleotides, but that organism is not free living. It is a host. It requires a host to get the nutrition. So that is, in my understanding, not a good example for a less universal common ancestor, which has to be free living. And also in 2016, they came out in Science magazine with a paper also attempting to find which would be a minimal living organism, and they also came out with about 438 proteins and 470 genes. But there they also said, well, amino acids would just be free around in the environment, and the cell would import it. But that is simply a made up assertion, because in the Miller-Urey experiment, from the 20 amino acids, they did not synthesize, didn't get 8 of them, of the ones that are used in life. And there are very complex amino acids like tryptophan, which requires a very complex synthesis process. And that is, of course, an open question. So I think that the starting point should be a free living bacteria. And the smallest one that we have is 1.3 million nucleotides. So the question would be, how would in prebiotic Earth be made RNAs in that quantity and with the right 4 or 5 bases, and then start polymerization? That are, in my understanding, already unsolved and unsolvable problems.
Okay. For my understanding, you need to have some metrics before that, because you cannot have a bacteria from chemicals. So I think that were some stages before that, and on those problems are quite big ones. So I cannot give an answer on all of that, but I think it's possible to obtain some things like that with the little bit of luck, a huge amount of luck, and I think that we will find some kind of pathway to that result. And of course, I do not think that organism will start to bacteria or even anything like that, because it's too complex to be created from chemicals, I think.
So what would you suggest as a protocell?
A protocell's something that it's not alive, with maybe some RNA or DNA. It's more complex than that, but with some RNA, some form of protection, like Fazale Rana was saying in the video, and minimal function, maybe some proteins.
Yeah, did you pay attention to what he said when I asked if
yes, I did.
Protocell? Okay, yeah, but the clays, when Tony was mentioning it, the clays they're using now, they're pre-made, and did you hear the end part?
Yeah, are treated with distilled water.
Yeah.
So yes, it's quite a problem, because
Yeah.
you need to have something like that in nature, and it's quite difficult to obtain distilled water in nature. I don't think it's impossible, but it's quite hard to do, and I give you that. I don't say that's a simple process. I just say that it's not impossible for me, even if it's hard, and anything in science is simple. So we do not know, as for now, how life began. So yeah.
Yeah, I would grant you that. I mean, that's fair. I mean, your whole, we call it naturalism of the gaps, but I mean, that's fair that you hold the view that, science doesn't, we don't have all the information. We could discover something in the future, but one problem really with the DNA, if you're going to leap to, from abiogenesis to a living creature, is DNA, the pairs, with the base pairs, the A, T, C, and G, those, the prescriptive specified information, it isn't dependent on any chemical attraction or any the bonds or anything like that. It's that coded, that information, you have to account for that. Even if you were spotted, you were given DNA, somehow it formed, you would still have to account for the specified information problem.
Well, on that, it's for me it's not simple, but if you have DNA, you can have proteins, and if something works, you will take it, and if it's not working, the organism will die, or if it's not alive, will degrade it.
Right.
Will be degraded. So I see a way to life to form. If it's working, good. If it's not, it will degrade. I cannot say that that was a thing in those times, because I don't think that in the prebiotic earth you will find life as we know it. So it's not life, but if he can self-replicate, it's something. Maybe not life as we know it, but it's something.
Right, and that's where I was kind of getting at your last point there about the replication, that you would kind of need that information for the replication. So you kind of go back to a chicken and egg, even if you try to avoid the original chicken and egg, then you still go to another chicken and egg, and that's just, we see it all throughout nature. I mean, even on the
chemicals can do something without information. It's quite a strange term because even in inorganic compounds you can find information. So I fail to see your point.
Where's that again?
It depends on how you define information. I mean,
I can give you an example. Maybe it's wrong, but I can try. Like if you have a cup of water and you need to analyze it to discover if it's tainted or not, you can add some chemicals, and those chemicals can turn your water in blue or light blue in some color. So you can take that color and know how much of I think there are organic compounds inside the water, how many there are. It's information, but it's just chemicals, and you have an information color, and you can get that color and translate it to a quantity.
Yeah, but it's information because you understand what the result of the test is. It's not that it's conveying the information.
It's contained in the water. The color has a length wave, so there is information.
But
it's my job to translate it to something else, but those information are inside the cup of water.
But it's not instruction unless you use it as a language to convey a message. Then that would be the intelligence not coming from the water or the chemicals.
Well, there is something inside the cup that turn the water into blue. So there is something, and it's doing something. So
it's identified which molecule it is.
Well, we can say it because you can find a mathematical expression that correlates the color of the water to the chemical, and you can know it because to know it you must
right, but it's not like it's telling you. It's not like it's telling you I'm this organic compound or I'm another organic compound.
It's telling me that it's an organic compound with oxygen and carbon in it. So
because you understand the results of the test. Not that it's telling you anything. It's just that you know what the reaction has to be or is.
Well, but there is information in that cup.
But that's really not the kind of information we're talking about. Is more on the line of instruction and programming. It's not.
Well, but it's still a chemical doing chemical stuff. You can see it like a code, and I can give you that it's some kind of a code, but you can find that in inorganic compound too. If you know it, you can get similar structure to organic compounds, even with inorganic material, silicates.
But it's always going to be the same result, though, right? It's not going to be a different result. It's not going to give you information like what we call information. You know that.
Well, you can store information in
prescriptive.
You know, like what could be one thing or another. it can't tell you one thing or another. It can only have the same reaction every time. That's what chemistry is. It always has the same reaction every time, unless it's programmed. And what we're talking about is that the cells are programmed with instruction.
I don't see that. I see a very complex chemical doing quite a lot of stuff, but it's not different from anything. Yes.
Luca, let me ask something. What does the genetic code do, and what does the information stored in DNA do?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
The genetic code translates. There are 64 codons which assign 20 amino acids, correct?
Yes.
How did that assignment, that is an arbitrary assignment, how did that emerge on early Earth? How did the understanding that codon X means amino acid epsilon, how did that relationship emerge?
It's just a chemical reaction.
But there is no physical physical connection between the codon and the on the tRNA. You have two distant places. On one side you have the triplet codons, the anticodon, and then you have at a distant place the amino acid which is attached there. But there is no physical connection between the two elements, so that is not a physical reaction. And then you have to ask, how did that assignment of the codon to the 20 amino acids occur? And why is there also a wobble which gives robustness to the translation?
I think it was a mere chance.
So
not only mere chance, because there is still a chemical reaction inside it. Because to form the tRNA, you have some chemical interaction in it. So it's not completely random, but the sequence it's random. But if it works, okay, and it will continue to function. If it's not working, it's discard.
So does matter have the urge to become alive?
Sorry, I can hear you, but not very well.
Okay. I'm a machine designer, okay?
Okay.
So when my boss comes to me, he says, I need that you make a machine with that feature and these materials in order that then that machine has a specific function, and then my drawing goes to the factory, and their workers, they read the instructions and then make the machine upon the precise instructions that they have been given. Okay?
Okay.
So that is an analogy which I am giving in regards to what happens in the cell. The genome stores precise, codified, instructional, complex information, which is codified through the genetic code, and these instructions, they are sent to the first it is transcribed to messenger RNA, then it goes to the ribosome, where the mRNA is translated into amino acids. So that is an analogy as the genome is the blueprint, the engineer department, and the factory is the ribosome, which reads the instructions and then makes the machine. So that is entirely an intelligence-based process, which is based on assignment of meaning, and the designer, he has a language which the factory workers can read and can apply that instructions and make the machines. We see that in an analogy in the cell as well, where the instructional information of the genome is transformed into molecular machines through proteins. So there has to be an assignment of meaning, and that is always something that comes from intelligence and not from random occurrences.
My problem with that is that to assert something like that, you need to prove that a designer exists. Then I'm not expert on biology, and I would love to have some visual to talk about it, because I gave a couple of classes on biology, but it's not my forte. So for what I remember, it's okay. It's not random, because I've seen in the chat chances. Okay, it's not mere chances. Evolution, it's not mere chances. But for what I see, there are just chemical compounds, and I've seen in my work during my work in thesis that chemicals can create very, very complex things on their own, not living things, organic compounds, but not living ones. I was working on thermoelectric compounds. I don't know if you know what's all about that, but are chemical compounds that transform it into electricity. Okay, and they can do it without a real designer. It's just a chemical compound. So
yeah, but that is not
I can tell you that. Sorry?
That is not an analogy to what we see happening in the cell.
But you can have very complex function in a chemical. So DNA is quite complex. It does a lot of things, and I can give you that. But even those machines that you say that are machines are just chemicals. Okay, complex one. We cannot reproduce that not without a very huge effort. But yes.
Do you understand that the DNA is giving instructions, and instructions are being carried out and making directed working mechanisms?
But how can you know that those instructions are really given by a mind? Chemical are very complex things, and they can do a lot of things. So how can you tell
as far as I
that?
know, as far as I know, they can't give instructions. They can't write instructions.
But you see that, and you say this kind of process as an instruction, and okay, they work like that. But how can you tell that that process come from a mind and not just from a chemical law or physical law?
Well, like Tangelo was saying, it's not the property of the chemical that is where the instruction is coming from. It's not coming from the property of the chemicals. It's foreign to the structure or the properties of the chemicals.
Yeah, it's given by the order of some chemicals, but you are still working with only chemicals. So how can you tell that those kind of instruction came from a mind.
Yeah,
because
you don't see that as evidence of coming from a mind. You don't see that could be evidence for that.
No, not like that. To show me that, you must show me that a creator is even.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off, sir. I apologize. Go ahead.
Don't worry. To me, you need to show that a designer is even there. If you cannot, you can have a structure that resemble language, and DNA does that because we all know how DNA works, more or less. But if you cannot show that a designer exists, how can you tell that what you have there it's not a natural process?
Yeah, but
even if it's a real a complicated one.
Yeah, but you don't need an explanation of an explanation to know it's the best explanation. An example being, if we found a spaceship on the dark side of the moon, and we wouldn't need to know exactly which, like maybe it was put by aliens. We wouldn't necessarily have to prove the aliens to know that in some intelligent entity made that space shuttle. Would you agree?
Yes, but if you cannot show the existence of the aliens, you cannot tell that alien exists. So, and also a spaceship, you can tell that a spaceship is made from someone for various reasons. With chemicals, it's quite hard to do so, in my opinion, at least.
Because the biology is not the only evidence that we have of a creator. It's not just the instruction. It's actually the working molecules themselves and where the molecules came from, because even the molecules can't make themselves or
well,
originate themselves.
it's quite a question that where the energy come from. I don't know that. I don't have any answer to that. So in my view, I start with energy.
Yeah.
I know about Big Bang, Big Crunch, but I'm not. I almost didn't know. I don't know almost anything about it. Just the high school thing. So it's not my field of study. So for me,
by the way,
there is energy, and I cannot know where these things come from. I don't know that.
Luca, I would like to give just a final comment to what you are saying. You say that we cannot prove that there is a creator, but this is a very common, actually, but a very basic epistemological mistake, because we do not require proofs in regards of origins. What we need is an inference to the best explanation. You do not have proofs that the natural world is all there is.
I cannot have a proof of the supernatural. For how can you have a proof of the supernatural if it's outside reality?
Well, it is a logical inference from the evidence.
Yeah, it is inside reality, actually.
How can you test something that it's supernatural?
Because no natural thing can make itself. No natural thing can account
How can
for
you
its
tell
own
that?
because
biogenesis.
it requires an energy greater than itself.
Luca, wouldn't you have an infinite regress of universes?
I don't know what happened. I just said, I don't know. I
Okay,
can
so then,
start with
but
energy,
you're certain it
but
wasn't God, right?
I don't believe it was a god. Not a
Yeah.
kind of god you believe in, at
But
least.
it was a greater power, though,
Maybe. How can I tell?
because it has to be. It can't be an equal power or a lesser power. It has to be a greater power.
As I said,
what-
I cannot know about that.
Sure, we can. Sure,
Some
we can.
people tried to explain that, but I don't think that anyone will be.
Well, you can not want to follow the evidence. That you can do, but I like to follow the evidence, see where it came from.
But it's not evidence. How can you tell?
It is evidence.
Evidence
We
about
are
what?
we are the evidence of our Creator,
Why?
because we can't produce ourselves. Nothing can produce itself.
Again, you will fall into Big Bang and the origin of energy. And I don't think that anyone will be able to find all the answer about that.
I mean, you can close your eyes if you want, but then, I don't have to close my eyes. I can ask, where did the energy come from? It came from a greater energy. It has to.
But I can tell, I can ask you to, if you believe that God created energy, okay, and it's possible. It's not impossible. Okay, and then I can ask you, and God, where did he came from?
No, but then you
Luca,
have to understand the definition of God, though, because God is defined as infinite. God did not come from somewhere. God always was. So that's the definition of God that has to be understood.
Okay. Energy cannot be destroyed or created, for what we know. So we start with energy. What change?
We start from
It has to
beyond
be,
what we
okay.
know.
Every energy is contingent. Everything is contingent on something else. It has to come from something that is not contingent on something else. It has to come from an infinite
but
source.
God did not. So if I stop at energy and I say that energy is eternal, it's just a thought. It's
So
not
what's about
that
the
it's true.
second law?
But if I say energy it's eternal, it's my starting point. What changed from God? It's my starting point, because if you have a God,
but you can't have
God did not came from anywhere.
Yeah, energy is contingent. It's always contingent on a greater source of energy. So at some point you have to have a source that's not contingent on something else.
I'd like to
you
offer
have to
something
have
maybe.
it goes,
Luca,
if it's getting greater.
Yeah.
If it's getting
What would you
greater
be
and greater
appealing
all the
to?
time, it's got to be infinite.
Yeah. Would you be appealing to the multiverse then? Some sort of infinite something you have to have.
I just don't know. I'm not an expert on Big Bang and Big Crunch and this kind of theories. It's not my field. I just have an
okay, hold on.
high school
On
understanding on these topics. So my problem is, if you start with God came from nowhere, and
but you have the same thing. You have to have. We understand, but you have to have some sort of infinite something that was always there. Antangelo, can you read him the quote by Vilenkin?
I have to find it. Just a moment.
If I may make a quick comment then, Luca. The thing is that energy is in time.
Yeah.
But God is beyond time.
Because
so you have to hold on.
You have to know what the definition of God,
it.
especially the Christian God, is defined as infinite, all knowing, all powerful, and and not limited by time or distance, because that's a fabrication
Yeah,
that
that's not
God made
that's true,
when
but
He
it's not
made
exactly
matter.
what I'm trying to say, Jungle. If I may have a moment. Yeah, what I'm saying, Luca, is that we have to appeal to something that is beyond time, and energy is not
So
beyond time. Because of
always,
infinite,
people
because of
like to
infinite.
deride the goat herders. It was the goat herders that
Okay.
defined God for us as being eternal, all knowing, all powerful, and not limited by time or distance.
I'm still just trying to finish my sentence, if I may. Yeah, so we must go to something outside of time, because if we look only to things within time, we have an infinite regress that's impossible and we would never exist. So, because God is outside of time and energy is not outside of time, energy is not a possibility, but God is, as far as an origin.
But it needs to be a God.
Okay, so what is it? What is it, Luca?
I simply do not know. I don't think you know either. So the difference from me to you.
No, we admit we have faith. We admit we have a belief, but
Okay,
so does the
I
atheist.
did not have faith. So when you ask me that, what was before energy, I say I don't know. I cannot know.
Yeah, but you have the same.
I do not have faith, so I cannot explain something I do not know.
But you can think about it, Luca. And there are basically three possibilities. Energy was not eternal because we know that by the second law of thermodynamics and entropy, the energy winds down. And there is a moment where energy cannot make any work anymore. And we know that our universe will come to a heat death, and then nothing will happen anymore. So that means that there was a state where energy was at its highest level, and then it just started to wind down. And we know that the universe had a beginning, and that includes energy. So energy is definitely not eternal. And then you have to ask, so what created everything? That is energy, matter, space, and time. What is the cause of that? And of course, you can say, well, we don't know. But you can also say, well, let's think about the possibilities. And then you probably will come to meaningful conclusions.
Sorry, you touched on the second law of thermodynamics, but did you know more or less what's all about in the second law of thermodynamics? Because I get that a lot, and I find very, very few people that actually know what the second law of thermodynamics is, because I worked with it. So just asking you, what kind of understanding about that did you have?
Well, Luca, if I may, what about the entropy within the second law? The entropy itself is a statistical mathematical phenomenon, right? So it can exist in other mathematical systems. It doesn't just have to be strictly heat energy and thermodynamics as far as entropy. The second law has a bit more to it.
If you are talking about the second law of thermodynamics, you are talking about entropy. It's you can quantify it. It's in joule on Kelvin, and it's a very specific thing. There is also entropy in quantum mechanics. I'm not well versed on it. I can speak about the first one, the classic entropy in thermodynamics, and it's what Lord Kelvin was talking about in the second law of thermodynamics. It's measure of the ability of a isolated system to do the work. Over time, the system will lose its ability to do work. It's a measure of degradation of energy, and it does not mean that you lose energy, because as you know, energy is always the same. You cannot destroy energy. Okay,
I'm sorry, but it sounds like you're a little bit mistaken, because the entropy portion is a matter of dissipation. So for
sorry, I can
the
hear...
energy. Okay. Well,
sorry.
Is that better?
Okay, now it's better.
Okay, thanks. The energy portion is it's dissipate, or the entropy, sorry, got my words straight. The entropy portion of the second law has to do with dissipation, mathematical dissipation. So if you don't understand that, then you don't fully understand what entropy is.
Dissipation? What kind of dissipation?
The energy dissipates through its system so that it no longer does active work. So I mean, I do see
energy
what you're saying, but the entropy piece itself is dissipation mathematically.
Sorry. If you have an isolated system, okay, nothing can left the system, okay, right? If you have an isolated system, nothing can enter or leave the system. So the energy is the same, okay?
But it dissipates, and that's what the entropy is the dissipation. Like for instance, you know, heat will want to go into an ice cube and melt it. That's one simple example. So the heat is dissipating.
But if your system is isolated, you cannot have it transferred, okay?
What?
If the system is isolated, you cannot have it transferred. So the energy is all in the system.
Did you say lidded, like closed?
Isolated. It's different from closed.
Isolated. He's saying isolated. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what that. You asked me what the dissipation was, and I was just saying, like, when heat goes into ice, it's because the heat naturally dissipates, and that's what entropy is the dissipation itself. That's the exact thing that is the entropy within the second law.
But he's saying the energy doesn't disappear though.
Yeah.
Not disappear, dissipate. I'm sorry, it was just a language barrier. Dissipate.
But it's going nowhere. If something dissipates,
well, it's like spreading out evenly.
Okay. Yes.
Within the system. Yeah. So that's what dissipate means. It's not disappear. It's a different word. So I think that was our confusion. Dissipate is like spreading out evenly.
Yeah. It's the measure of the system losing its ability to work, because if you move a piston, then you cannot do the same thing in an isolated system. Okay? We are there.
And do you understand what I mean when I say the entropy is the same thing as the dissipation part? That's the specific part of the second law that is entropy, is the dissipation itself. It's in the math.
Yes. Let's say that the energy cannot do more work in that system. So the ice is no longer there. You cannot have ice again in an isolated system because it's melted.
So the universe cannot be eternal.
Well, energy does not disappear, so it can be eternal. I cannot know what will happen when heat death will reach this universe. I cannot know, but it's eternal. Maybe we don't know what will happen when entropy will be at its climax. So when heat death will come.
State of heat death, and then the universe cannot operate anymore. It will just be static.
Well, how can you know it? Maybe the Big Bang and Big Crunch, it's a thing. So at the end of time, whole things will collapse together and start anew.
What will wind up the energy again to get to a new starting point if you have no energy left, if it's all transformed in heat?
You will have energy. Energy will stay the same.
Yeah, but it will not have any capacity to perform work anymore. Because
I think he's saying it'll collapse. It will collapse back on itself and maybe rebirth. That's what you're saying. Yeah, I follow what you're saying, but I don't think that's a necessary possibility. But go ahead.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, George.
Right. I was listening to the discussion as I was walking my dog. I just got home and unmuted myself. Luca, you have a misconception. You have a misconception between what descriptive information and prescriptive information is. Did you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the molecular machines that are within the cell, like the editase and the microtubule highway?
Yes.
Okay, they have a specific purpose. They make decisions. In the case of the editase, it searches along the DNA strand for errors, and it corrects those errors. Now that can only come from an algorithmic process, which requires foresight. Foresight can only come from a mind. It can't come from a chemical.
Why not?
Well, you prove it because we can show everything that we've done in computer science with algorithms shows us that those sorts of processes have foresight and require a mind.
How can you tell that they require a mind? Sorry, but I do not follow. I
just explained to you. They are decision matrices. Chemicals don't make decisions.
There are some very complex process, okay, but it's nothing I cannot explain with evolution.
There was no evolution.
Okay, so your position is we don't know, but there's definitely a naturalistic explanation to it.
On that, I think that you can find an explanation on how this kind of system form. I'm not an expert on it. I cannot talk about it with confidence, but I know of some of this structure are like machines, I can give you that, but are chemicals doing chemical stuff, and they work very well in their field. But I can see how natural selection can lead to something like that.
No, well, it can't. Natural selection can only select. It can't create anything new.
But you can have mutation and other process that can lead to this kind of things.
Well, no, because there's no example.
And work well will be selected. Okay, like mitochondrial in the cell are probably it's not a theory, but there is strong evidence pointing to an organism being hidden by a bigger cell, and then those little cell became over time part of the cell. And I think that some process like that is being observed in the lab over
Yeah, you're just going into imagination now to explain a naturalistic approach to how things are done. Because what you've just said is pure imagination.
Okay, can I interrupt you guys just a moment?
I'm telling you that on the mitochondrial part, we have evidence about it. Not just about the mitochondrial, but we observe in the lab something like it. On the molecular machines, I just think that some mutation can lead to this kind of structure.
Luca, I muted you. Because we have already spent an hour with you, and I would like to move on and have someone else to have another topic. So I would say that I would like to put someone else into the chat, but I have left on the chat 2 links to my library, which you can access, and there is also a link to in regards of instructional informations, and you can have a look there. And then when you have some questions, you are free to join again, and we can clarify some things. Is that okay?
Okay. Good night to everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes,
thank you, Luca. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Me too.
Okay.
Wow.
Difficult, huh?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I was trying to find out whether he had a beginning, but then I was starting to question whether he's this position I don't know much about called anti-theist.
Yeah, I don't know, but it seems whatever we brought up, he had always a but ready to object. And it always boils down to, well, we don't know. And,
yeah, and it has a naturalist. We'll find a naturalistic explanation to it. That's the nature of the gaps argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely holding out full hope that there is going to be a naturalistic explanation. But then he concedes that he doesn't know, and then he also said it was possible that it was God, and then later on said we can't know. So he's not following it. I don't think he's being honest. I mean, not that he wasn't being honest. I'm saying I don't think he's truly being honest with himself. I think he thinks he is, but I don't think he really is. And I'll yield. Sorry.
I really don't know. It's difficult to understand what goes on in his mind, but there are things that are so obvious to us, but it seems that they are not obvious to other people. And to analyze why that is so, that's kind of difficult, I think.
True. Because you're forced to look at the a creator if you know you really only have 2 choices. You know, the world was created or it wasn't created. It's like you said, is it eternal universe or was it a created universe? And so you have to be honest with yourself. If you don't have any evidence to think that it was eternal, then you need just to look at the possibilities of a creator.
I mean, if someone comes and says, well, we do not have any proofs that God exists and you have to demonstrate the creator, then I have an indication that this guy is on the lowest level of understanding what sound epistemological framework is in order to investigate origins.
Totally agree.
You know, and I mean, hey, do we want to spoon feed these people and explain to them that it's not about proving things, it's about just looking where the evidence leads and to find the best explanation of things? I mean, this is unfortunately so common amongst atheists that they ask us to prove that God exists, and it's really boring to say the truth. I mean, hey.
Yeah. Like I told him, like I'm sorry, like I told him, you don't need an explanation of the explanations to know it's the best explanation. So I mean that's pretty basic philosophy. Go ahead, George. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Look, I come from an engineering background. not the same field as Ortangelo, but I'm a civil engineer, structural engineer. And we start off with plans. We know what the customer wants. We design those plans. We tender them and we construct what's on the plan. I look at the cell, and there are so many things in there that have got, as Ortangelo is alluding to, there are blueprints on how to do things. The additives, the construction and dismantling of the microtubule highway, and many, many other parts of the cell are designed for a specific purpose, and they're integrated. They're all integrated. I can't see why the evolutionists can't see that.
They don't want to see it.
Correct, yes. Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's the best naturalistic answer.
Well, I don't know how we're actually going to convince them if they take this hard-nosed attitude of, oh, there must be a naturalistic explanation. We're going to continue going, for 20, 30, we won't last that long based on genetic entropy. We'll probably be extinct in 1,000 or 2,000 years, but sooner or later they have to admit, they've gone that far, they can't go any further. It's been a failure.
All we can do is just keep hammering home the point, man. And because it's there, but they just, you have to pray God opens their eyes, because it's there. They did, like you said, they just don't want to see it. And we say that all the time. It can't be oversaid. They just literally do not want to see it.
Yep. How many dead horses do you attach to the dead horse to tell them that the horse is dead?
Yeah. That's the problem.
And
somehow frustrating, because you at least I do my best to use analogies to make things very clear, very simple to understand, but there is simply a spiritual block, and if God doesn't remove it, then they will not understand these things.
That's correct.
Sorry,
I was just going to add that that's correct. All we can do is actually defend the faith, and it's really up to the Holy Spirit to change their heart.
Yep.
But we can get better and better at it, so that the Holy Spirit's working through us to make it happen. So we always must remember that.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And you touched on it. You touched on it in the chat, Nicholas. When I was reading Romans last night, the evidence, God has provided them the evidence in His creation. So it's there, so they know, and they're without excuse. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew. I apologize if I cut you off.
No, you're right. I was just going to add, the tactic I was trying to apply there was what Hugh Ross does, which is basically let them talk and let them create a rope for them to be hung, because that makes them look bad, apparently, or whichever way you want to look at it. It doesn't make them look. It doesn't paint them in the best of light.
Yeah, I agree. And I more than just touched on it in the chat. Like I was really going on and on for a while. The Holy Spirit really took over me for a while. I broke down on my knees, like crying, and now I see why Tony is so passionate and why he'll sometimes spam and stuff when this topic comes up, because I didn't realize just how proven this is. And philosophically, it's been proven for a long time that there must be a first mover, at the very least. And now that Jesus has made it obvious who the first mover is, people don't want to believe it's Jesus, so they try to deny there's a first mover, which is just really stupid and probably really damages the ability to think powerfully, because you have to ignore truth to think that.
I think one of the problems.
So much for free thinking.
I think one of the problems is they don't teach them critical thinking skills at school. It was evident listening to the discussion earlier about information. Luca had no idea what the difference between descriptive and prescriptive information was. He kept going to this glass of water that was blue, had information. Yeah, but doesn't do anything. That's the thing. It needs to be prescriptive information, and the cell, the DNA, is full of prescriptive information. The epigenetics in itself are algorithms that turn on and off over, I think it was over 4 to 8 million switches in the region they called junk DNA.
But you know, the most incredible thing, did you hear? He said that he's a teacher, he's a professor. Now,
oh no, he's not a professor. He's actually going to school to get his chemistry degree. I don't know why he said that, but I've been in conversations with him before, and he says that he goes to school to get his chemistry degree.
Okay. So
I think he said he's just a butler. I think. Sorry, Luca. I don't know if you want to clarify in chat there, but I think you said you're a butler, and you're very polite, so that sounded very realistic.
Well, I'm waiting for the chat to see if he responds.
He was, so I don't want him to think we're attacking him, because he was in a room full of theists, and but he did kind of miss that point about the prescriptive and descriptive information, and
that is a very good.
He missed that point too, because the second law of thermodynamics, eventually you will maybe come to, like Antangelo said, you'll come to a place of stasis. So how is that going to wind itself back up? It's a problem.
Yeah. But
Well, I guess it's like us. Sorry, I guess it's like us going into an atheistic room and being the only theist in it.
Yeah, I mean, we have been very polite, so.
Oh yeah, you won't get this kind of politeness there, though. Well, I found
no.
Real quick, Luca did specify. He said he has a bachelor degree. So when I heard butler, he had said bachelor, like a bachelor's in chemistry.
Yeah, in chemistry. That's correct.
Yeah.
Although he mentioned to me, this is a few months ago, so it may have changed, that he was going to school to attain a bachelor's degree in chemistry. So he may have actually achieved that, and good on you, Luca. Well done.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's if the schools are open.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm only talking out the hand. I thought Italy was further along than Australia was, but I guess only anybody living there can tell us that.
Oh, Andrew, are you from Australia?
Yeah, I'm a couple of hours up the road from you in Brisbane.
Couple of hours. I think it's a few more than that. Yeah.
Well, it's about 9 hours for me to get to Sydney. And then you're down in Melbourne.
We're in a self-imposed prison here.
I know. You're in 5-minute lockdown, or like 5K lockdown.
Correct, and curfew after 8 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. 8 to 5. Sounds like when I was at work. When I had a job, I couldn't go out between the hours of 8 and 5.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, buddy. You've got a bad leader down there too.
I agree with you. We call him Chairman Dan.
Yeah, well, I just call it. There's another guy called Matty Rouse. He's another Australian guy. He calls him Doofus Dan or Dickhead Dan or something like that. But
oh God.
Anyway.
Yeah. Back to the discussion. Yeah. Sorry, Atangelo.
Yeah, I think I will finish our chat in about 20 minutes or so. It's 1 hour and 13 now. So in 1.5 hours, I think it's a good time to end our chat here.
Yep, that's awesome. Thanks, guys.
Atangelo, before you shut down, with this unicellular that colonized itself to become multicellular, can you expand on that?
Yeah, there are two main things that are innovations for a transition from unicellular to multicellular life. and that is that cell-cell communication. These channels, they have to be formed because cells, they communicate with each other. And the second thing is cell adhesion. That means cells need to be able to stick one to another. And these two innovations, they had to occur at the same time, because if you have signaling or communication channels, but the cells, they have no way to stick one to the other, then you have no deal. And the contrary is the same problem. You can have cells sticking together one to the other, but if there is no communication from one to the other, then there is no deal. So that is a feature which is irreducible. The two innovations, they had to start together.
Do you know if that multicellular structure or the colony, when it's probed apart, do they continue being unicellular organisms or do they die?
I don't know. I know that, for example, there is cyanobacteria which can form filaments, and then they can compartmentalize the functions, and one of the cells uses nitrogen fixing enzymes, which is nitrogenase, and the other cell in a separate compartment fixes, let me think, yes, is doing photosynthesis and is fixing carbon. And since oxygen dioxide is harmful for nitrogenase, so there is a separation. But interestingly, there are also cyanobacteria which have the two functions in the same in the same cell. The function is not separated. They have internal protection mechanisms in order for nitrogenase not to be shut down and its function to stop working. So I don't know exactly why there are two versions and separations, but they exist, and they can work in both configurations, as unicellulars or also as filaments of two different distinguished cells.
Well, there are examples in nature, in God's creation, I should say, where things like that do occur. If you look at a colony of ants, there are soldier ants. There's the queen. There are ants that have got specific purpose in tending to the eggs and the young. So I believe if the queen dies, one of the other ants can become a queen. So there's an example of that happening in real life. So it's not anything different to a colony rather than a true multicellular organism.
Yeah, I know that algae, like Chlamydomonas, they can also form filaments. Now, I think that these filaments, the structure to become so, that is a pre-programmed process. It's not an evolutionary innovation where they were first just unicellular life forms and then they became attached to each other and formed filaments. So a multicellular organism is composed of a variety of different cells which perform different functions.
Yeah, and you've seen a school of fish, specifically the sardines. When they're threatened, they literally conglomerate into one ball to literally, I guess, as a defense mechanism. So I saw that conglomeration of the unicells into multicellular, nothing different to, say, a school of sardines.
Yeah, they use usually these examples like Chlamydomonas as evidence of the transition from unicellular to multicellular life. And I think that's not true because upon my understanding, the information that they can become filaments is already there. So they're pre-programmed to be able to do that. Now, if they could become colonies and then start to really organize to differentiation of various kind of cells and with different functions, and we could see that of course would be a major macroevolutionary step. That would actually prove that macroevolution is true. But I have never seen such kind of evidence being presented.
Yeah. Well, I've had my say. Someone else can have a go now. Nicholas, have you got anything to say?
Oh, I don't know. I thought I heard something that Otangelo was wrapping it up, but anything to say? Well, I'm not as much into the science. I'm more into how I mean, I do see the proof. I'm very logical and can follow these things, but yeah, I was very passionate about the whole how obvious it is, how we really do. It is proven scientifically that there is a designer, and to try to say, well, based on some infinitely small percentage chance that there's not a designer, that maybe there's not one, it's just a silly thing to propose. So we've proven it scientifically. It's been proven philosophically for a long time. Our Savior proved it on the cross, and then they still deny it, and that hit me really, really hard during this interview.
Yeah. Just from everyone's knowledge, the Hubble constant, which is supposed to be a constant, is ever changing because of the latest information. They now tell us that the universe is 1.2 billion years younger. Okay, so it's no longer 13.4 or 5. It's now 12 point something. So first it was getting bigger, now it's getting smaller. So figure that one out.
Yeah. And soon they will say it's much, much older because the radius, they are saying it is much larger, the universe. And of course, when it's much larger and there are stars farther away, then the starlight takes longer to reach the Earth. And that means that the universe has to be much older. So, hey, I mean, they started with the eternal universe. And then they said that the Earth is 100 million years old, about 100 years ago. And then from then they just started to say it's older and older and older. Now we are at 4.5 billion years of the Earth and about 14 billion years the universe. And soon they will come up with another story, and it always changes. And they think that is a good thing because science obviously always follows the evidence, while religious books, they just claim something and never change. But hey, they say that the universe was eternal 100 years ago, and now they confirm what the Bible says. So,
yes,
I mean, I see so many atheists claiming, well, we have always only met and found natural explanations in regards of nature. But I think that is a complete straw man and nonsense. We have never met any reasonable explanation of basically anything. I mean, what we see is that science unravels more and more how complex and how finely adjusted everything is, based on mathematical laws, based on fine-tuning, based on complex instructional information in the cell, which produces molecular machines, which produces cell factory parks, and so on. So science is doing us a great service to demonstrate that everything points to a creator. The problem is that people, they do not want to accept that understanding, that inference, and keep simply ignoring God's truth.
I totally agree. I always say their great act of defiance is deny, dismiss, and reject. In all cases, they do that. Deny, dismiss, and reject.
Yes. Once you have a predisposition and a bias that you do not want to permit a creator to enter the door, then you will deny his existence, whatever you show.
Yeah. Well, it was a lovely discussion, Tangela. I was going to join earlier, but I was walking my dog, but I was listening to it was a very good discussion. I've been blessed now with two pre-shows, shows and after shows. I'm not sure if you were involved in the debate between Godless Engineer and John Maddox, but that was a day and a half to behold.
That was incredible. I've never seen someone being so embarrassed like Godless Engineer, and I don't really know why he even accepted to join that debate with John, because he demonstrated that he has basically no understanding whatsoever in regards to what happens on a molecular level. So, hey, educate yourself, and then you can actually defend your position. But participate at such a debate with someone like John, which is very well versed and understands his stuff, I mean, that was a disaster for him, and he just embarrassed himself. I would not have liked to be in his position.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to John, and I had an inkling what was going to happen, and I think he was thoroughly embarrassed by that. DNA is like Diet Coke, and when John brought up the Royal Society of London and their discussions, that literally made him look like an absolute fool.
Yeah.
They keep denying that DNA is a code. They have to, because they know as soon as they admit that it's a code, there has to be a code giver.
Yes, that's
codes
why
don't generate themselves.
That's why they are so desperate to deny that DNA contains a genetic code.
Correct. Yeah.
Then Godless Engineer, when I asked about the Diet Coke having code, he totally just died on that hill. I mean, he just stayed on that hill and died on it and died on it and died on that hill.
Yeah, he has no understanding whatsoever, even on a very basic level in regards of biochemistry, and that what we see is information instructing molecular machines how to operate. And I have recently made a major investigation in regards of how individual cells gain their form and shape, and I have listed over 35 different instructional mechanisms, and then a myriad of different molecules inside of the cell that follow that instructions and then apply forces, and they stretch and they change, and they may there are so many things just on a cell level, and it's just the more you dig deeper, the more it's demonstrated how complex everything is, and that of course is pointing to intelligence. When you have instructions and someone understanding the instructions and following them and executing what is instructed, that is a process which is undeniably coming from intelligence.
Yeah, I always summarize it as purposeful, functional, integrated complexity. That's what the cell is. It's integrated, it's complex, it's functional, and it has a purpose.
Yes,
that's exactly what every machine that we make is the same.
That's why I love my factory maker argument. And of course, atheists, they have no answer to that, and they cannot answer it. And you have basically, on the one side, intelligence instructing how to make things, and then things being made upon these instructions. On the other side, you have just blind chance. And when you show them the odds to have just a minimal proteome, which is 1 to the 10 to the 700,000, and that's in the realm of the absolutely impossible, then say, oh, well, we see a lotto winner or someone winning at the casino all the time. Oh, I live in Las Vegas, I see that all the time. I mean, that is just so irrational when you think about this whole thing, you know. So
it will be interesting, Tangelo, in say the next 10 years when they get further and further into the 4D nucleome project, how much more knowledge will actually gain as to what that non-coding region actually does. And really we should be hammering this point to them that, you know, here they are for 30 odd plus years, they've been telling us it's junk, it's left over from our common ancestry evolution, and yet we find so many functions transcriptions that occur in the non-coding region. The stuff they told us not to bother with because it was junk.
Yeah,
That's got to be very embarrassing to their position.
Yeah, this is an interesting aspect, George. But one thing that I see, and which is not very much mentioned in these YouTube debates, is the fact that the cell has, I listed 24 different epigenetic code systems and languages, and we know just of the glycan code that it's stored in the glycoproteins on the membrane surface. We know of the histone code, which is stored on the tails of the histones, and there is maybe another one, but the other over 20 codes, we don't know where the cell is storing these codes, and we don't know the language. We don't know what kind of code it is. We just know by science doing experimental investigations that when you remove a signal molecule, a signal protein, then signaling stops and then development stops. So this resumed means that there are so many languages which instruct how to build organismal complexity, and when they start to unravel the language of these signals and these codes and languages, then our case of design will be exponentially enforced. And also, of course, what you said about the epigenetic, about the junk DNA, when they unravel what that is, that of course will also more and more give robustness to our inference of intelligent design.
Well, they'll probably they'll probably keep denying that they ever called it junk DNA, but the history's there. They can't sort of they'll be exposed for doing that. I actually did a whole post on Facebook about junk DNA where I actually cited the original Ono paper, where even the title of the paper said junk DNA, and they can keep denying that they ever called it junk. It's right there in print, mate. It's in print.
Yeah. They try to deny it now and say, well, we never said or claimed that it's junk. We just say that we didn't know what it does.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, their favorite one is define function, define evolution, define information. It's always define the word define. You know, like it's stupidity. It's semantics. They're playing semantics.
Yeah. Okay, guys.
It was lovely to talk to you, Antangelo, and God bless to everyone in the chat and to Nicholas.
Yes.
Shalom.
Cheers.
Thank you, Antangelo. Thank you, everybody. This is an awesome community.
Yes.
Shalom.
Okay.
We'll talk again.
Yes. Bye-bye. See you next time.